gases in the air can affect the symptoms that you're having, how they cause the headaches, how they correlate to the symptomatology that you're having. So that's one type of doctor that we're going to be hearing from. And then let's hear from Dr. Anthony Redding. Like I said, Dr. Redding is a clinical psychologist, professor at UCLA. Dr. Redding.
Thank you so much. I'm a psychologist. I'm going to talk to you about factors that promote stress and psychological issues. Look at some of the symptoms or what we see in the context of high levels of stress, and then what we might do about that. Let's see. Okay, so there are various factors we know from research that enhance the effects of adverse events such as this. So these are shown here. The first is uncertainty. We know that in the context of uncertainty, a situation becomes more stressful. Uncertainty here refers to we don't know when it's going to end. We don't know what's happening, what toxins are in the environment, how it's going to affect us. So we're awash with uncertainty. That's not a good situation. And then the second is we feel out of control. This process we're here tonight is a way of regaining, restoring control. Control is protected in the context of stress. The threat, if it's short-term, may or may not have long-term consequences, but certainly where we see extended exposure to stress, then that has the potential to become more debilitating. Then another factor we consider is whether there are opportunities to achieve a sense of safety or sanctuary. Okay. Okay. So I don't know if I should start again. Do you want me to start again? As I say, once is enough. Not for everyone. So lack of safety. If the threat is pervasive, it pervades our home, it infiltrates all aspects of our life, then that's why people talk about relocation. Where there's an opportunity to achieve a sense of sanctuary or safety, then certainly that mitigates, that reduces the effect of stress. Then lastly on this slide, interestingly, factors that are attributed, stressors that are attributed to human error, incompetence, inefficiency, cover-ups, they tend to confer more stress than when we can attribute the cause to natural consequences. So that's another factor that influences our reaction to adverse events. And then, as we've already heard from Dr. Fisk, the most vulnerable, older, younger, and those with prior issues and health problems. Well, we know that there are developmentally sensitive times where not just exposure to toxins have more adverse effects, but also to stress. There are studies from Harvard and other research centers showing that stress can have disruptive effects in children and adolescents owing to their development at that time and the stress coinciding with brain development. And so there are critical periods, and once again, in terms of effects, there may be immediate effects, and sometimes these effects may be delayed. And that, of course, creates a problem because we are watching and waiting to see if anything transpires. And what this shows also, we can see symptoms that are transient. They may be upsetting at the time, but not have any extended adverse effects. We can see chronic symptoms that continue. And then what I put up there are occult symptoms, which means they may be masked or hidden. They may not be obvious for some time. And very often stress may happen in that way, where we may not be fully aware of the way it's impacting our body. So these are some changes and symptoms that we tend to see, particularly in children. So behavioral changes, irritability, withdrawal, loss of interest. Some of these are particularly for children, depression, fear. Children become clingy, they have separation issues, fears, phobias. Children may regress. So if you see your children returning to prior ways of conducting themselves or emoting, then that would be a sign that the child is under stress. Sleep issues, night terrors, and physical symptoms that in the past might have been irrelevant or insignificant now become significant because those physical symptoms, a nosebleed or sinus issues, may now take on a different connotation, a more sinister connotation, as indicating some ongoing process that's impairing a person's health, arising from the understanding of the environmental exposure. These are more serious symptoms where people develop what we call trauma symptoms, and that can certainly occur in the context of an event about which a person feels out of control. They may begin to have recurrent, upsetting, intrusive thoughts about their health, about the exposure. They become more fearful. They start on the bottom there checking. So what we can see in the context of stress about health, people become more vigilant about health signs, symptoms, changes. And then there's a vicious cycle that can occur where a person then becomes more attentive, and then that becomes the central focus. It's harder to dismiss or put out of a person's mind. And then lastly, what can be done, particularly with children? So the first thing is we identify illicit concerns of children. So it's important to talk to your children through play, to try to elicit if there are issues, and if so, to validate the concerns, to listen to their concerns, to attend to them, and then to see if we can modify them. Well, what we have here, I have recalibrating risk appraisal, which means we have to address fears of being at risk and try to put that in a broader context. So for example, when we talk about recalibrating risk appraisal, people are probably going on airplanes without any concern, but once there is a plane crash and that is in the news, then suddenly the risk appraisal of flying for a lot of people changes. And the same here. The exposure to the news changes a person's appraisal of risk, and that can then set in motion this escalation of alarm and fear. Dealing with uncertainty as best we can. So there are certain things we're uncertain about, but trying, particularly with children, to remind them of those things we are certain about. The love of our parents, the fact that we're always going to be there. And then opportunities to turn down. What happens under stress is there's a system we all have, the fight or flight response, which is ramped up, it's activated, which in a short term is not a problem. In the longer term, if it's not shut off, is a problem. So we assist children and adults in turning off that level of alarm through relaxation, yoga, reassurance, cuddling with your pet, whatever that may be, to find opportunities on a daily basis to bring down that level of alarm if it's ramped up. And then, just to close, trying to maintain positives in a lifestyle. In spite of the chaos, in spite of the disruption, in spite of the relocation, trying to establish with the family and maintaining those routines. And particularly for children, those are going to be very important in taking away some of the pressure and stress that's clearly happening, particularly when they see, and we want to avoid this, parents venting their own concerns. So we have to protect the children from the alarm that adults may be feeling about the child and about themselves. So I'm going to close there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leonard. Before we go on with our next medical expert, I was just